Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Restricted Republic. My name is Justus Knight. I can't thank you enough for being here. I'm sure, like us, you are going through a litany of emotions: anger, confusion, being upset, feeling non-represented, not knowing what's going on, what happens next, all is lost. You can just go through everything that could be happening in your mind right after what they're terming this violent capital shakeup. Shakeup portion is what we're going to really focus on, because there's something they're not telling you. And it shows exactly why this all happened. We're going to tell you, and we found it in an amazing presentation of what I'm going to term die-hard fact. Why this all occurred. And why 2021 you're not going to see this stopping. Because we've lost focus on two very important things, and we're going to get there rather quickly. I don't want to disrupt when I get started on this broadcast, so if you don't understand by now how important it is for you to be given not propaganda and narrative, but truth, you'll understand why we created Restricted Republic. We show you here on this platform as much as we can, and I hope you'll subscribe. It means the world to me, and share the video to get our message out. But more importantly, the reason we created Restricted Republic was for what has now transpired. It was written in the cards long ago. This should be no surprise to anyone. We've tried to get that through to everyone. So I implore for you to get over there. Take us up on the 14 days for free, simply for signing up. Because if you value information, and education is the key right now. You must be educated, and not by the propaganda and lies that the mainstream media continually gives you. That is a pre-written narrative. Get off script, and you'll start to be able to put everything into focus. But I don't want to take any longer on this. I want to get into our broadcast, because we're going to start with an image and a thought process, and we're going to end with it. Kind of relates to that violent shaking up that we're going to talk about, as we found an absolutely incredible article, and it started by referencing this quote from George Orwell's Animal Farm. 12 voices were shouting in anger, and they were all alike. No question now what had happened to the faces of the pig. The creatures outside looked from pig to man, and from man to pig, and from pig to man again, but already it was impossible to say which was which. And how true is that when you put it in relation to what's occurring around us? Now, I'm not going to get into the complete meaning of the Soviet post-revolution and what all this means. I'm going to rather just pull, and we leave all our references at justusknight.com or restrictedrepublic.com. Restricted Republic is the easiest to find. Just go into the About, and you'll see the hyperlinks to all these references. At the very bottom of this Thought Company article on Animal Farm, it states, the 7 commandments of animalism, written on the barn wall for all to see, represent the power of propaganda and the malleable nature of history and information when the people are ignorant of the facts. The facts that they don't want you to know, but we're going to uncover each one of them for you very shortly. The commandments are altered through the novel each time they are changed, indicates that the animals have moved even further away from their original principles. Our government has moved further away from the Constitution, original principles. Mankind in this country seems to be moving further away from the commandments, the Bible. And look what's happening to us. We're being shredded. We're being destroyed. And we're being deceived. Now, I want to give full props to the man who deserves full props here, John Whitehead's commentary in an article he titled, What to Expect in 2021, Madness, Mayhem, Manipulation, and More Tyranny. We're going to walk through. We're going to use this article to frame up our entire conversation today. His opening paragraph states what to expect in 2021. So far, it looks like this year is going to be plagued by more of the same brand of madness, mayhem, manipulation, and tyranny that dominated 2020. Frankly, him and both I are sick of it. He uses the term that I've used throughout all my broadcasts recently. The hypocrisy, the double standards, the delusional belief by Americans at every point along the political spectrum that politics and politicians are the answer to what ails this country. When for most of our nation's history, politics and politicians have been the cause of our agony or our woes. And how much have we talked about that recently? Too much focus on the federal government that is failing us completely. We believe in states' rights and the power of the people. The Constitution is well written to enforce that, but we're not utilizing that. We keep all our focus on the White House, where so much in Congress and Senate and the House of Representatives, there's so much special interest now, it can't help but to now have a new era of corruption. I'm going to show you why that's the wrong path to pursue. We have propaganda everywhere. Just look at the titles and how they term things. Before rioters stormed the U.S. Capitol, Trump supporters called for violence online. All Trump supporters, how many millions and millions and billions of people voted for President Trump? All called for violence? No, of course not. The end result is what you see here, and something that should never be seen in our capital. But what led up to these events? It appears that everybody's being shaken up, and you would expect after all this occurred that people would call for silence and unity. Even Biden saying unify everybody, but that's not what you got. You got more divide. Barack Obama blames conservative media ecosystem after Trump supporters stormed the Capitol. Chuck Schumer condemns Trump supporters, the people who follow him. You get more divide. And you saw the pictures of everyone in the Capitol, and if you identify with them or not, what has transpired has transpired. People are upset. Now, of course, they'll seize on certain images and people. It's what they do. The most polarizing images is those the media will go with, but not the message behind why all this occurred. So we're going to go back to the article again. It states, consider, for years now, Americans with sheep-like placidity have tolerated all manners of injustice and abuses, all put on us by the government, police shootings of unarmed individuals, brutality, corruption, graft, outright theft, occupations, and invasions of their homes by military police, roadside strip searches, profit-driven incarcerations, profit-driven wars, egregious surveillance, taxation without any real representation, a nanny state that dictates every aspect of our lives, lockdowns, overcriminalization, etc., without ever saying enough is enough. You can even watch when you're looking at the headlines here between what is called news. Mob storms U.S. Capitol. Woman shot dead by police in chaos. Pro-Trump protesters shot at Capitol is dead. D.C. police confirm. Women shot dead by police in chaos. Another headline. But now if we just move over to the All tab, and you notice I use DuckDuckGo. I don't use Google, and there's reason for that. I want to make sure I get metered information for the most part. I use multiple search engines. Unarmed pro-Trump woman. Now everything changes. Shot by police, have died unarmed. Breaking, unarmed woman shot and killed by Capitol Police. Breaking, videos reportedly show D.C. police shooting unarmed. You see how everything just shifted there, a paradigm shift completely, because we moved away from the propaganda. We've moved into real news and what actually occurred. It's what we do at Restricted Republic daily. But now the article goes on to state, only now do Americans seem righteously indignant enough to mobilize and get active. And for what purpose? Politics. They're mobilizing on the very place where little hope can be held anymore. They're focused on Washington. They're ready to go to the mat over which corporate puppet will get the honor to serve as a smiling face on, he references it again, the pig for the next 4 years. Government has changed its face from what it was supposed to represent, which is we the people, to its own special interest. So then why are we continually focused on federal government? The biggest distraction technique of all. Talk about delusional, he states. A perfect example of how farcical, topsy-turvy, and downright perverse life has become in the America, while President Trump doles out medals of commendation and presidential pardons to political cronies, as he says. Now, you and I may agree or disagree with this portion of the article, but that doesn't mean you just dismiss the entire thing. That's another propaganda technique they use against you. What's happened with the one man who actually exposed everything? This man, Julian Assange, who's still fighting for his freedom. You see, when you actually give unfettered information about the government and expose high levels of corruption, your salvation is not guaranteed. Only if you served a special interest is it guaranteed. And you see, that's the problem that we must all start to watch here as you see this story take shape. And we're going to go back again. You'd think that Americans would be outraged over such abject pandering to the very swamp that Trump pledged to drain, but that's not what the right and left is so worked up about. No, they're still arguing over whether and who voted in which election. Either way, no matter which candidate lost to the other, it was always going to be the deep state that won, and we even saw that during Trump's presidency. Look at what they did to him with the trials, the ongoing trials, over and over, the deep state controlling the entire narrative the entire time. And so you have it, reduced to technicalities, distracted by magicians' con games, and caught up in the manufactured, highly scripted contest over which beauty contestant wears the crown. We have failed to do anything about the world falling apart around us. We're again focused on Washington. As debt has skyrocketed due to COVID, state debt is out of control, but you're not hearing anything about that narrative. Of course not. No, but if Congress runs out of funds, and they may go out of business for a little while, man, they always find a way to make sure that they're not shut down, don't they? Well, it's immediate, because you and I are secondary to their all-knowing authority. Our economy, at least as it impacts the vast majority of Americans as opposed to economic elite, is in shambles. Our infrastructure is falling apart. Our government has been overtaken by power-hungry predators and parasites, and our ability and fundamental right to govern our own lives is being usurped by greedy government operatives who care nothing about your lives or our freedoms. Our ship of state is being transformed into a ship of fools. Biden is allegedly going to put cabinet positions in the spotlight to help our crumbling infrastructure, but hasn't that been done already? The House approves a $1.5 trillion plan to fix crumbling infrastructure, but what's actually happened there? Has anything been fixed or repaired or improved? Is the question. See, they just do the same thing time and time again, in some ways in an attempt to pacify you and I. We stand utterly defenseless in the face of technological revolution brought about by artificial intelligence and wall-to-wall surveillance that is reorientating the world as we know it. Despite the mounting high-tech encroachments on our rights, we have been afforded a paltry amount of legislative and judicial protections. Indeed, corporate America has more rights than we do. And they do, because every time we attempt anything. Let's take Section 230 to allow us additional rights, freedoms. It never seems to transpire. It just fizzles away. At least they'll pay their taxes, right? Well, no, actually not. These 91 companies paid no federal taxes in 2018, or Facebook sued by the IRS for $9 billion in unpaid taxes. Now, you see, they seem to just continue to get away with everything. You and I would not be given nor afforded the same luxuries, now would we? To this power elite, we the people are good for only two things: our tax dollars and our votes. In other words, they just simply want our money. We stand utterly helpless in the face of government violence that is meted out by both at home and abroad. Indeed, the systemic violence being perpetrated by agents of the government, inflicted on unarmed individuals by battlefield-trained SWAT teams, militarized police, and bureaucratic government agents trying to shoot first and ask questions later, has done more collective harm to the American people and their liberties than any single act of terror or mass shootings. This is nothing new, it's just never reported on. Poisoning our police, how the militarization mindset threatens constitutional rights and public safety. We saw what happened at Capitol yesterday and what those police did to anybody who stood in their way. And unfortunately, that resulted in the death of a young lady, an unarmed young lady. Served our military forces. How much of this is now coming true? But that's not going to be enough from them, because even though the police are militarized, they're going to make sure that you and I are not. And so this will be coming also here in the near future as we move forward. So what do? We stand utterly silent in the face of government and corporate censors and a cancel culture that, in their quest to not offend certain viewpoints, are all too willing to eradicate views that do not conform. In this way, political correctness has given way to a more insidious form of groupthink and mob rule. And we've seen evidence of that every night on the nightly news. If you say something that they don't agree with, it's termed hate speech. And it's for your own good, to protect others, or simply just silence you. We stand utterly locked down in the face of COVID-19 mandates, restrictions, travel bans, penalties, and everything else to the populace to unquestioningly accede to the government's dictates. Whatever the crown shall please, as I say so often. Whatever they might, as long as they are issued in the name of national security. Prior events have been the biggest intrusion on our privacy and our rights, no matter how extreme or unreasonable, and America just simply takes it. Now you have advisors advising for more shutdowns, although we are financially crippled. Our deficits are growing. Our way of life is already altered. They want more, and they'll continue to want more. We stand utterly intimidated in the face of red flag laws, terrorism watch lists, contact tracing programs, zero tolerance policies, and all other manner of police state tactics that aim to keep us fearful and compliant. We stand utterly indoctrinated in the collective belief that government, despite its long-standing pattern and practice of corruption, collusion, dysfunction, immorality, and incompetence, somehow represent we the people. It absolutely does not represent we the people anymore. It is non-representative. And that's why you're seeing, as Judicial Watch posts here, a huge increase in government corruption. The latest annual Justice Department report, this is back in 2016. Now imagine now where this corruption lies. 60% rise in government corruption throughout history. It's continued to accelerate the more power we give to the federal government. But that's not where we're going to end. We're not going to end in a hopeless nature. We're going to end with hope. Because education is hope, by the way. You knowing this information, it will forever now change you and the way you look at things. That's what some people fail to comprehend. They miss that part of the message. It's a grim outlook for a new year, but it's not completely hopeless. If hope is to be found, it will be found with those of us who do not rely on politicians that promise to fix what is wrong, but instead do their part at their local levels to right the wrongs and fix what's broken. Local politics. You now need to be engaged. It is our only protection against an overpowered federal government. The Constitution wrote it to be so. I am referring to the builders, the thinkers, the helpers, the healers, the educators, the creators, the artists, the activists, the technicians, the food gatherers, the food distributors, and every other person who does their part to build up rather than destroy. Are you one of those? The ones who build and give back to the communities, to help feed the states, to help make people think. The states' rights and the 10th Amendment. The debate over states' rights started with writing of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. During the Constitutional Convention, the Federalists, led by John Adams, argued for a powerful federal government, while the Anti-Federalists, led by Patrick Henry, opposed the Constitution unless it contained a set of amendments specifically listing and ensuring certain rights of the people in the states. Fearing that the states would fail to ratify the Constitution without it, the Federalists agreed to include the Bill of Rights, and it limited what the federal government should be responsible for to these 17 or 18 items, let's say. Are you aware of what they should be doing? Because this is it: to borrow money, to regulate interstate trade, to prepare for the defense, to establish a rule of naturalization and uniform laws to such, to establish post offices and post roads. And it goes on to declare war, to raise and support armies, to provide and maintain a navy, to make rules for the government and regulation of land and naval forces. Very military based, but now how is that expanded into each and every one of our daily lives? It's far exceeded any of these 18 items, and the implied power is why I say the 18th, to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers, and all the powers vested by the Constitution of the government of the United States or in any department or officer thereof. No, we've exceeded that now. We've demolished that. They've blown that apart because people have forgotten the basis of the system and how their focus needs to be on their state legislatures. Which, by the way, for those of you who have lost all hope, don't forget that we've taken control of the majority of those. Until we can own that truth, until we can forego our own path back to a world in which freedom means something again, we're going to be stuck in the wormhole of populist anger, petty politics, and destruction that is pitting us one against another, which brings us full circle to that initial image. The states let this sink in. If you go into the Southwest desert and catch, and I've heard this story termed multiple different ways, but if you catch 100 red fire ants and 100 black ants and put them in a jar, well, nothing really happens. It's anticlimactic. However, if you violently shake the jar and dump them on the ground, the ants will fight to the death. They'll kill each other. The thing is, the red ants think the black ants are the enemy, and vice versa. But nobody's looking at who shook the jar and started the battle to begin with. Because that's the reality that we have to understand. We can't be ants in a jar. We have to see who's shaking it to understand how to remedy it. This is exactly what's happening in society today, the author John Whitehead concludes now. Liberal versus conservative, black versus white, pro-mask versus anti-mask, now jab versus non-jab. The real question we need to be asking ourselves is who's shaking the jar and why? Why do they want us angry at one another? Well, you know the answer to that now. You just put everything into perspective for you. So before you get too caught up in the circus of politics and conveniently timed spectacles that keep us distracted from focusing too closely on the government's power grabs, first ask yourself who's really shaking the jar. Conveniently timed spectacles keep us distracted from what just occurred. Auspicious wording. Because we've forgotten certain elements, we've dismissed them and put them aside because we've given too much power to the little g God the government wants to be. They want all control. I've reported on that over the last 2 weeks and showing you how they're doing that through all the manifestos they're writing for themselves because they want you to forget big G. It's not all they want you to forget. They want to create their boogeymans to keep you focused elsewhere. When in all reality, pure pork politicians are the ones who are actually collecting all your money. Even not the boogeyman, Gates or Buffett, they're not getting the majority of your money, are they? No, the government is. And that's where we need to stay focused and not be the people in the jar, and rather realizing who's shaking us all up. Because through that understanding, we will be able to better remedy the situation at hand. Too much focus on the federal government when their true power is kept in check by state governments. You want to do something? Get more active in that venture, and everything will begin to change. Don't be distracted by the largest distraction and propaganda campaigns ever fraught on humankind. And that's what we're in the midst of right now. Education and information will put everything into focus, and then you'll understand what needs to be done. Quit letting Washington, D.C. consume all our attention, because every time they do, they just divide us further, don't they? I'm praying that all of you are safe. I'm praying that all of you get this message and share it with everyone. So we're not isolated into what people saw or what people will see or what's happened or what's going to occur or how the mainstream media is going to term what happened so that they can vilify everyone who may disagree with their position. And that's what they'll do now. just like we promised would happen. It's going to happen. No, this is what's called a moderated message to get out to the masses so that they can consume that knowledge and act on it. So until next time, if you haven't subscribed to me here, I certainly hope you will. I really hope now you'll go over to Restricted Republic and take us up on our offer of 14 days, because now I think you completely understand exactly what's occurring and why that is so critical to the future of freedom of information, truth, news, and reality. Until next time, Godspeed and God bless. Justus Knight, signing out.